Okay, hello! Hello
Hi.
out there, people. We're here, so, kind of a wacky Mando discussion. So we didn't have one last week, cause schedules. Usually Gina would be here, who is not, cause schedules, but we're hoping she'll make a surprise appearance. But we have Ray here, who you may have seen in our chat before.
Mm-hmm.
But,
Hello.
Ray, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'm Ray. I come from the Midwest, as Jess does, and you might know me as one of the co-hosts to the Hearts of Kyber podcast, which unfortunately has not been recording this year. It's been a tough year for Christy and I, who's my co-host, but we're hoping to get back to it soon at some point. Lifelong Star Wars fan. Everyone knows that I love Revenge of the Sith the most. But I have love for everything in Star Wars, so I'm really happy to be here, Jess.
I'm glad to have
Django.
you on,
It's gonna
finally.
be
Yeah. And then we actually get Django. I pried him out of his
Mhm.
teaching cave for a couple of minutes.
Zoom University has spared me for an hour or two.
And in the chat so far, we have Stuart and Andrew and Bear and Mr. Rez. Welcome, everybody. So far, some good people out there. So, we're going to talk about, like I said, 2 weeks. I was saying before we started, or turned our mics on, like, spoilers? Like, warning, we're going to discuss spoilers. If you, for some reason, came to this stream and haven't seen the episode yet, and you're watching, I don't know why. I guess thank you. But I would recommend liking the stream and then leaving to go watch the episode. But, Ray, what were your general thoughts about the last two episodes that we got?
Well, this episode for this morning, I actually got a text from Jess at like 4:30 in the morning. I got it before my alarm went off, so she was freaking out, telling me to watch the episode, so I was like, oh, I should probably watch before work. And my first thought was, I was very excited it was only 37 minutes. Not that I haven't liked the longer episodes, but I did like how the shorter episodes were a thing last season, so
Gotcha.
I was kind of pleased about that. I liked it. I was kind of surprised they did a Bo-Katan reveal that fast, especially for episode 3, but I enjoyed it. I thought it was very well paced. I think Bryce Dallas Howard did a great job directing, and I'm really excited to see what else she does, whether for this season or other Star Wars stuff. But I really enjoyed it. I was surprised that they name dropped Ahsoka Tano right away.
Yeah, I was too.
That was a big one, but I'd say solid 9 out of 10, I would think, if we're gonna give a rating.
There you go. Django, how are you feeling?
So I liked the episode last week, and I think I loved the episode this week. Did I freeze?
No, I can
Am I
hear
frozen?
you. We can hear you. I think you are frozen, but your voice is not.
Oh, good. Okay.
There we go.
So anyway, I was anticipating that technical problems had happened, but no. I liked last week's episode. I liked the ice spiders kind of stuff. I'm a big believer that creature stuff makes Star Wars. So when we got I saw a lot of people like, oh, it's a filler episode, and I'm like, no, this is essential Star Wars here. But no, anytime I get references to Rebels or the Clone Wars now, I'm just ecstatic. So
right.
I was freaking out as soon as those Death Watch uniforms or the armor were there again. I'm like, wait, it's happening. And Jess is like, I was live texting her as I'm watching it, and then it was Bo-Katan, and I was so excited. And I'll be honest, again, this show keeps giving me the things that I explicitly have said I don't want, and then I get really excited when they do. Like I said that I didn't want Boba Fett, and then I said I didn't really want Ahsoka, and like here we are with all of the things now, and I'm super jazzed. So
I'm so pumped. I really liked both episodes. I've kind of overall been feeling this season more than last, and I've been trying to figure out why, and I really can't explain why. I don't know if it's because now they've, like, as a show, even though it's different directors, have more episodes under their belt. It just feels more cohesive. I don't know if it's because the material we're getting to, but I've just really been enjoying this season. I also like creatures in Star Wars, so that helps a lot. My big beef with this week's episode is I really want. I was really upset. Okay, like they were in the cantina, and he was like, "Hey, I need you to help me find my kind," and the guy was like, "Yeah, I'll help you." Har har. Like he literally giggled, like saying he would help Din, and then he got my son eaten, and I'm like, Din. Din, he literally laughed at you. What are you doing? And but thankfully, then my son got to hang out with the frog parents for a few minutes. And I think that's the first, I tweeted, that's the first parenting I think he's ever had in his life. And I'm hoping to see if he's now an upstanding member of society from like 3 hours with his swamp family. And we'll see what goes on.
It just makes me think that like Dave and Jon Favreau must be like around my dad's age, because
Right.
I feel like there's the last couple episodes, like before they wrote them, they watched Ice Road Truckers and Deadliest Catch. And it's like they're all on the History Channel and the Discovery Channel. And if the next episode happens in a pawn shop and a grumpy dad and an old man, then we'll know for sure.
I would love to see like the Star Wars pawn shop pop up. It's just like they try to sell the destroyed prawn or whatever it was called.
Just gotta go to Batu for it.
Yeah, right? Oh, if this show goes to Batu, I might die. Like I might, from like a good way, like the good kind of I might die.
The good kind of dying.
Yes, it would be the good kind of. I would just disappear into the force if we went to Batu.
Just be a Captain America lounge pants on the floor all of a sudden.
Exactly. Exactly. So this season has brought us a lot of really cool fan references, right? We had Cobb Vanth in 9. Even the spiders, which people's opinion on probably depends on their opinion on spiders, are like the knobby spiders. I think we saw them in, I don't know if it's going to end up being the same species, but like we saw them around the Bendu and Rebels, but they're also from an old Ralph McQuarrie painting. And then now we get Bo-Katan with an Ahsoka name drop. And I feel like there's always this debate in Star Wars on like fan service, but I feel like they've been kind of walking that line of fan service done right, if that makes sense. Like with Cobb, you don't have to have read the Aftermath books to get a story because it's the same story. With Bo, I think you could even, if you had never seen a cartoon, I think you could follow enough. Like you wouldn't really know what's going on, but you wouldn't be confused by her either. You might be as confused as Mando about the helmets, right, but you wouldn't be lost. So I personally think they're kind of balancing that idea well.
I would say you were talking before your one beef. My one beef is her hair.
It's fair.
Like I understand like why they need to make Katie Sackhoff look the same as Bo-Katan in the animated series, but she doesn't need to have the exact same hair, We're gonna know it's Bo-Katan by the armor. The
That's
people
true.
who get that reference.
That's
and
true.
Like she introduces herself as Bo-Katan. So that's like my one costume beef, is that they didn't have to have the same hair, because that's not her hair. So
that's true.
Anyway.
Well, and anytime I think about fan service, like if you want to have one cohesive universe, right, things will overlap. And so like it shouldn't be a surprise to us in a show about a Mandalorian that other Mandalorians we're familiar with, get name dropped or show up. Like that's not, that shouldn't be a surprise to us. And it's separate from me than, like the Legends sort of tendency to, shove Han Solo into literally everything. Like this is not that. Like that's like you have fan service and you have fan service, right? And you have something that gets thrown in and like shoehorned in a way that doesn't work to try to say, oh, you like Obi-Wan, there's Obi-Wan, or you just have references to other things that are good, and that's not the same thing to me.
Right, and they're talking, the Darksaber was introduced last season, so who was the last person we saw holding it.
Was Bo.
Yeah.
Yep.
So she's gonna appear at some point.
I was so happy, and I was so happy that it was Katie playing her, because they didn't necessarily have to do that, even though it seemed pretty obvious to do. I don't know. We have Dom and Mick in the chat. Welcome. I like Mick says here, if fan service isn't working for me, then it probably means I'm not the fan who wants that service, which is true. I think that's a pretty good way of putting it, right? Like, I think fan service, because like, I agree with Django. Like, I know the book he's referencing specifically of Death Troopers, but it feels annoying when it's the character that you aren't as into who's just showing up. But now I'm the person where it's like, I have my rules on what I'd like to see in stories, unless it's Yoda. In that case, I don't care what story it is. He can just show up. He can take over as the main character. Like, all of my rules on what is good storytelling go away once it's my character. So I think there's always that one person that likes whatever they do. But it's just
right, Jess. And for me, it's Cobb Vanth. I love Timothy Oliphant, so just bring him on back. I don't care.
I wouldn't complain. I wouldn't.
And in one of these episodes where we get the ghost of Callista Ming, I'll just be off the wall.
Whatever, Django. You're only a fan because you've never read her books. Actually, speaking of Cobb, though, I really want, after all of this, Din to like go back to Tatooine and be like, so I guess you can have this armor, and like leave it with him and like walk away. No explanation.
Anyway.
So let's talk about it. We got so it's been like a year, right, where we got the show, and you had the contingent of people who, like, Mandalorian is the first Star Wars TV show they'd seen, and they were like, oh, this is what Mandalorians are like, and then folk like us who had been watching the shows and were like, this is weird. Sabine like only wore her helmet when she was flying. What is going on here? And then they pretty much summed it up in like a conversation of just like, oh, you're zealots, Surprise! Surprise!
It was just like, yeah, no, you're a zealot.
You're one of them. I mean, but I also think that it was such a simple explanation, and I think it's the one that a lot of us anticipated anyway.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those things that sometimes, especially Star Wars fans, I feel like try to look for things to fight about. And so like it became one of those things. But it's so easily settled, and you just move on beyond it.
Yep.
So I mean, I don't think Din is going to just go for it. Like, I think he's going to stick to his guns, but the fact that he was able to, be accepting of Bo by the end of the episode, it works.
Yeah.
Right.
And for him to expect, Go ahead.
Yeah, I love how angry Tin got when she was just changing the terms. He's like, you can't do that. That's not how this works.
And I loved her, this is the way, like, so sassy. Like, just throwing it right
such
at
a
him.
burn.
It was Bo to a T, though. Like, that's 100%. And it's interesting, too, because then they only really say the Watch, but presumably they came from Death Watch, which Bo was in for a time and left when Maul killed Pre Vizsla, if I'm remembering correctly, back in Clone Wars after Satine's death. And then... So, she's kind of been on her own journey. And I think it's kind of interesting. It's a subtle detail where it's really the background guy. I'm a bad fan. I don't know their names yet. But the other guy, and he was the one who was like, oh, he's one of them. But Bo was the one who was always, like, trying to talk to Din and get him to, like, believe them. And so it's like, as much as she's, like, over him and annoyed by him, I think she's also like, nope, I remember what it was like to be in this group, and you don't have to be in this group. And I kind of liked that she was just a little bit different than the other two in terms of, like, treatment of him.
Right, and she was kind of like, okay, I know where you're at in your journey. You'll see. Yep. You'll see at some point.
You'll get there.
Well, this also makes me really want to know more about the Purge on Mandalore too.
Yeah,
because like the idea that Din says, it's a cursed planet. Like, why would you care? Like don't go there. Like it's like that seems so like counter to me. Like if it's occupied by the Empire and you don't want the hassle of it, I get it. But like the idea that this is not the place we're supposed to be. It seems strange to me. It makes me really want to know like where that comes from.
I want to know if it's from the Purge itself, or if that's part of his covert's thoughts to like keep foundlings in their covert from finding the other Mandalorians. You know what I mean? Like, is it a part
Maybe,
of conditioning, or is it really a thing? Like, is there really the superstition that the planet is cursed?
No.
I have a theory that I've put in a couple of places, but I haven't put out on Twitter because I don't want to share spoilers yet. But if you remember back in the first season, when Din was rescued from the droid attack, he was rescued by people from Death Watch. Like, that was their logo on their armor. And so I kind of wonder now, knowing that, like, they've officially established that this is like a splinter cult, like, what if Death Watch was actually in league with the droids in that battle? Like, what if they were working with the CIS to gain clout in that city, and then the Death Watch is responsible for Din's parents' death, and then, like, as a result, he's, like, living with the offshoot splinter group of the people that caused him to be an orphan. That's my new theory.
Yeah.
I would jump off of that too. Like, even if it's they're trying to build their numbers and get foundlings,
Mm-hmm.
where it's, Din saw it as like an act of mercy, of hope,
Mm-hmm.
but in reality, it's they're going through villages and taking kids.
Right.
I don't know.
Could be. We have Dom and Mitch both kind of talking in chat about wondering if it's really Death Watch or an offshoot. I kind of saw Children of the Watch kind of being like, the Dreamers from Inferno Squad that were like the remnants of Saw Gerrera's partisans? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know that I think this group is Death Watch, but I think they could be like children of people who were in Death Watch starting their thing. I don't know if that's just a semantics thing, but that's how I imagine it, but that hasn't been said.
I mean, and part of Death Watch's whole shtick was, being pure, Mandalorian and rejecting the pacifism that we saw in the Clone Wars. So, like if you start from that point, it's not, but like one step further to say, well, we're just going to take this to even further extreme where you can't take off your helmet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see that. And then I think, Ray, you had texted me before the stream that you had some thoughts, too, on what, like, his covert might have been doing, like, with conditioning.
Trying to remember. I feel like it's been hours since I texted you.
I can reread the text.
I don't remember. Thank you, Jess. Sometimes my short-term memory is
No,
bad.
You're fine. You said, so you can bring up how other Mandos view the Watch as religious zealots, and how Din could be brainwashed a bit.
Yeah, like, I don't know, it just comes from the idea, it's like, you can't take off your helmet, it's all these things that they have to do. I just feel like there's going to come to a point in this season, or maybe next season, where he's faced with some realities, some things he didn't know about the people he's been with, and we're going to see him struggle, because he's so to the creed, he's so to, what's expected of him. And I think his journey has already changed some of that, so I'm interested to see where that goes.
I'm interested in the Armorer, because I was having a discussion with some people on Discord about how if they really are this really zealous group, and presumably one that would want to keep their Mandalorians from contacting other Mandalorians too much, especially if they didn't see them as following, like, the actual way, why would the Armorer then send Din out to meet other Mandalorians? Like, is it she's kind of given up on it because their covert was largely washed out? Is it a move of desperation? Is it she's not as subscribed to this maybe as we might think she is? And maybe there's nothing there, and maybe I'm overthinking it, but I just kind of find their secrecy to suddenly, like, actually, no, go talk to other Mandalorians, kind of an interesting shift.
I mean, I think it could just be that people who are raised in that order don't know that all Mandalorians aren't. Right? Like, Bo had an idea that there was, this other group, but he didn't. Like, he anticipated that all other Mandalorians would be like him, and it was just a shock to him. And so maybe the Armorer is under that same, assumption.
Could be. We don't really know much about her age. There's only like the assumption you can make based off of the actors playing her, but that's not canonical in any way. John in the chat says maybe she didn't, which also hi, sorry. Maybe she didn't expect the Mandalorian to meet additional Mandalorians. So like she's sending him off on a wild goose chase. Because like she doesn't send him out to find Jedi, she sends him out like, well, I mean she does, but she does specifically say like you can find other Mandalorians, right? Doesn't that come from her, or am I misremembering her orders?
I don't remember. It's been a while since I watched the first season.
I feel like she was. I feel like she was. I think she told him to go find other Mandalorians. I can't remember, and I feel like the dialogue was in the previously on, but I didn't really watch that a whole lot. I think she just sent him off to find the Jedi. Okay, so then maybe Dom thinks she just sent him off to find the Jedi, so that might explain it then.
So let me ask you a question, because this was something that it didn't, like, it's not a problem for me, but it bumps a little bit for me now that they have Bo-Katan.
Yeah.
Because, like, when he says, I'm looking for Jedi,
right.
Her immediate response is, well, I used to know a ton of them, right? Like I fought, like, she sent them to Ahsoka, but, like, Yoda was Grand Master of the Jedi Order. Like, and, like, there's still no recognition by anyone so far that the child is the same species as Yoda. Like, so would Bo-Katan, like, legitimately not have known that? Like, she was a political activist in a way.
Yeah.
Like, well, we still haven't, apart from the Imperial people who are researching and Moff Gideon, like, nobody seems to, like, know that the child is that species. And it just seems like Ahsoka obviously would.
Right.
If and when we get Ahsoka. But it seems like Bo-Katan even would have plausibly known that too.
I think it's possible she could have known that's the same species as Yoda, but maybe not necessarily recognize how rare that is. Like, if she thinks, it's a species in the Jedi, it can't be that rare or something like that. But it's a good point. They're probably just trying to save that moment for Ahsoka.
Probably.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, we can, you guys had said this earlier, I was really surprised how soon they name dropped her. I'm kind of happy this is happening sooner rather than it being like this big, long, drawn out process to like just a series of cameos in the season finale.
Right.
But that it's going to be more of, I mean, I don't know that we're seeing Ahsoka next week, but now knowing for sure that she's going to show up in some capacity, I do wonder what her reaction to Baby Yoda is going to be.
I don't know.
Remember, Den thinks that Jedi and Yoda species are the same, right?
Yeah.
He doesn't understand that the Jedi's not a
species.
A species, yeah.
Which is going to make him meeting Ahsoka interesting. Because he'll probably recognize her as a Gruta, and so then be like, "What is going on?" Actually, I could really see it being interesting of him just going up to her and being like, "You're not a Jedi," and she'd be like, "Correct, I'm not a Jedi."
I'm just Citizen Tano.
You're right, I'm not.
That would be some
funny.
Really good dramatic irony dialogue if we could get that.
And she has to sit there and like work it, like try to explain to him like, no, I'm not a Jedi, but Jedi are not just a species, And he's just not getting it.
It's like my world is spinning. I don't have to wear my mask. You are not a Jedi, but also not a Jedi. I don't know what's going on. I'm having a crisis.
I mean, obviously, though, part of that I don't have to wear my mask is he's thinking, I could have been making out with Farm Lady last season, and like I missed out.
He's like, everything's a lie. No.
It's just really intensive birth control. Is what this armor is.
I mean, but to your point you were making too about, getting like right into the Ahsoka name drop, like I feel like there's equal number of people that I've seen who are complaining that it's like, oh, every episode is a step on this journey, just get to the end. But also, like, if we get there too quick, then it's going to feel like it wasn't earned.
Right.
And so, like, at this point, I trust them to thread that needle. But But it's interesting, like how many how many episodes are there this season?
I think it's the same, right? It's 8 again.
Yeah, so like if it's,
or is it different?
I thought it was 10. Maybe I'm wrong.
Oh, is it 10 this time?
Let me look. I'll look.
Well, but what I was going to say though is if it is 8 again, then we're almost halfway, right? And so it makes sense that if they're building up to, another confrontation with the Empire,
right?
Or whatever is ultimately coming, that this would be, right about the turning point,
right?
Because that makes the halfway point being the episode where he meets Ahsoka, or at least the episode after he first learns about her. Because it may take 4 episodes for the duct tape together Razor Crest to get to whatever planet they're going to.
Yeah, it's 8 episodes.
It's 8 again.
I was wrong.
Okay. I was excited for like.
Sorry, Jess, I ruined it for you.
You're fine. It's like 10 beautiful episodes. No, and if you think about what we have left, we still have to go back to Navarro. We know we're going to see Grief and Kara again, presumably for the episode that Carl Weathers is going to direct. And that's going to involve Gideon. And that makes me think that that's going to pull back in Bo at some point. She has a habit of following our heroes around. So just because they've went their separate ways, I don't think she's going to not
She'll be back.
magically show up. Especially because they're going to end up chasing this. That's what I love right now. Is they're chasing kind of the same person without realizing it. Or they're going to be, right? She's going after Gideon for the Darksaber. I don't think Din saw that he had the Darksaber. So I don't think he would even know. So, it's going to kind of become this ironic cross purposes. And so you're going to have whatever's going on there. Mick points out that we haven't seen footage from at least 3 or 4 episodes, presumably. And so then I wonder, is the stuff with Gideon going to resolve itself? And then we have Ahsoka? Is the stuff with Gideon going to resolve itself and involve Ahsoka? The Boba tease we got, is that even for this season? Or is the Boba stuff, because, I don't know why Boba wouldn't have left Tatooine by now if he could, because you can't, I love Cobb Vanth, but you can't tell me that Boba couldn't have gotten his armor from Cobb if he knew it was there and that's what he wanted. So, Boba has been stuck and or staying on Tatooine for some reason. So we have that thread that was there, he wasn't just a throwaway cameo. We have the Ahsoka stuff, and we have Gideon. So it's is all of that this season, or is some of it setting up pieces for a season 3?
Well, what my theory presupposes is that it was a throwaway cameo. It was just a reference.
And here's Boba.
One of my other friends, though, is convinced that it's a former clone trooper who's just living on Tatooine, and not actually Boba Fett anyway. But yeah, I don't think I wasn't convinced we would get Boba Fett anyway, and that was one of the things I didn't want. But I think that would be honestly a more interesting way to take the show. Assuming, and this will break Jess's heart, but assuming that the end point of the child story is that he delivers the child to a Jedi, and that's the end of that, then Din and Boba, partners in crime or whatever, season 3, would be an interesting kind of way to take the show forward. If that is the end point for this arc, that would be an open door for where to go afterwards.
Yeah, I agree. Dom thinks next episode is Carl Weathers. I think that's true, but I don't know that for a fact. And then Filoni's directing, possibly episode 5. And I would think that whatever episode Filoni is directing is going to be Ahsoka's appearance. If not, it's because she shows up in the last 30 seconds in the episode before. But I think that's a good idea, that whatever is Filoni's episode will be the first primarily Ahsoka episode. I just don't see him letting anyone else do it.
No, he loves her too much. I guess I'm hoping that the Ahsoka Tano storyline is just. I really hope she's only in one episode. Yeah. Maybe that's mean, but no. I don't want this to turn into
Ahsoka.
I don't want that.
That's why I didn't want Boba Fett.
Yeah.
Because I was afraid as soon as you have Boba Fett, You know, and that's why I don't have a problem with it just being a cameo, you know, a hint of a hint, you know, because we don't even know for sure that, you know, it's obviously Boba Fett's armor, but we don't know for sure that that was Boba Fett. There are other plausible explanations. So, like, having it out there as, you know, a thread that something else can pick up on later on, I mean, it's not terrible to me, you know?
I still think, too, that that's a setup for a potentially, like, third season kind of confrontation, just because I don't know how you go back to Tatooine this season with everything else they have going on. But I've been wrong before. But no, with Ahsoka, I agree with you, Ray, that I hope she's not in it a whole lot, because it especially, like, I love Dave, but when he gets his favorite things going, like, it could be really easy for her to take center stage. But the other reason why is I don't want this to be a substitute for a Rebels follow-up, right? Because we still have Ahsoka. Last we saw her in any other media, she was with Sabine going to find Ezra. We still haven't heard of Ezra and Thrawn's adventures in whale space, as I like to call it, to see what they're up to. And, like, I want that story resolved in a, maybe it's not called Rebels, but, like, in its own thing. I don't really want that resolved in The Mandalorian, if that makes sense.
Right.
And I know because, like, with Rebels, you might be the Ezra defender on the screen to figure out where he is.
Well, that's what I would just have to wait and see, I guess. Oh.
But I'm excited. I would love it as, like, a setup for, you know, yeah, I can't help you with Baby Yoda because I'm doing this other thing. But, like, I just, it would be so easy for them to be like, we're also trying to find a Jedi. He's stuck with Thrawn out in space somewhere. And, like, as cool as that would be, I just don't think it's fair to the Rebels characters that they're kind of, like, tacked on to this other show.
Or is it the other way? Is it that at some point, maybe not this season, that Baby Yoda ends up being trained by Ezra Bridger?
Sorry, I think I've got another call coming in. I've got to
I really am curious, though, what the end game is for Baby Yoda, and I think I said this last week, too. Because, like, what's Ahsoka gonna do when she sees him? You know, is she gonna be like, well, clearly you're getting him eaten by sea monsters, so I'll take him? Or is she gonna be like, no, I think that the Force is telling you that this is your problem? There's a part of me that wonders, is she gonna be like, oh my gosh, not only is that the same species of Yoda, but it's the Yoda clone! Because she would be able to tell that, of course. Because there's still that theory.
I mean, there's still always the option that he gets to this planet and she is not there.
That's true.
Right.
So, like we are assuming that he's going to get there and Ahsoka will be there waiting. And that may not be something we want to set ourselves up for if she's not.
Well, it's. I feel like this show is like, if it doesn't want to get our hopes up, putting Cobb Vanth and then Bo-Katan, played by Katie Sackhoff, in the show is not with Boba Fett. Like, I feel like this...
Literally every episode.
Like, you know, I just feel like this has not been the season to teach me to keep my expectations down.
Especially Star Wars fans.
Yeah, I feel like this has been the, alright, we're just gonna give you all of the things. I'm still holding out that Finnick isn't dead, and Boba's the one who walked up to her at the end of episode 5 last year. We'll get Ming-Na Wen back. But we'll see.
Like, why do that shot?
Yeah, that's my thing. If she's dead, why do that shot? But that could still be a payoff from our... Filoni loves seeding things, so...
Yes.
You know, and if with the success of the first season, there's no way this is going to get as many seasons as they want. So, I feel like that's part of why I'm so surprised that we got Bo and Bo with the Ahsoka name drop this week, is because Filoni's kind of a slow burn type of guy.
Yeah.
So I see Ahsoka. Mick is wondering if when we get Ahsoka, we might also get a live-action Sabine. I mean, again, this has not been the season for telling me to lower my expectations.
But haven't we seen some graffiti that was like in something that was like assumed to be Sabine graffiti? I feel like I've heard that conversation. I don't remember where the genesis of that was.
There was some stuff in Resistance in Tora's room
Maybe that's what it was.
that looked like Sabine graffiti, but
Right.
whether or not that was just like modeled after her, and I don't know if that's what you're remembering.
Well, everyone talked about how Misty Rojas, who plays the other Mandalorian in this episode, everyone was, because there was that screenshot of her in the trailer, and everyone thought, "Oh my God, could this be Sabine?" And I was like, I had like a moment where I was like, "Whew, it's not Sabine." Good.
Yeah, right.
Like I don't know. I'm just like I don't want them to put too much, like shoehorn these characters into this show, where the show is meant for the Mandalorian for Baby Yoda. So.
Yeah. Well, and it's like, if you go back to before the show started, I kind of stopped. I don't follow leaks either anyway. I don't like leaks, but it became something where the leaks for this show were so big. I think it was like the Baby Yoda effect, because Baby Yoda didn't get leaked and then became the internet phenomenon. Then it became whatever was going to be in the second season of The Mandalorian. Everybody wanted to know and have the scoop, so then when we have the next Baby Yoda, they were the one who knew about it. Never mind the fact that Baby Yoda became such a phenomenon because no one knew about him. But there was that list where it was the running joke of everybody was in The Mandalorian. And so some of those leaks that I only know about just because freaking like Slash Film and stuff were talking about him, you can't avoid it at that point. But like some of those have become true, but it's just a question of like, okay, is it going to be, are they true because they literally just guessed everyone was going to be, or you know, how how much of a menagerie is the rest of the season going to be? Welcome, Dale. Good to see you.
Speaking of menagerie, I also want to say one of the things I liked about this episode, and really the last few episodes in general, is the biodiversity that we're seeing in terms of like species representation. Like there were so many Quarrens in this episode. I thought that was cool, and you know, we got more Moncals in this too. Like I just thought that was I like seeing, you know, that we're not just like we're in the Star Wars universe, and it's not just the same. Like, oh, it's look, more humans,
right?
Because the humans are cheap to do on screen.
Right. I agree. I really like the Mon Calamari who had to fix his ship.
Yep.
Because he comes back, he's like, "I gave you 1,000 credits," and the guy's like,
he like tied it together with fishing nets. Like, this is what I can do.
I was texting someone this morning, and I was like, "This is an interesting episode because Baby Yoda doesn't eat anything that didn't try to eat him first."
Oh my God, the creature at the end, Mando just like grabs it. Oh, I laughed.
It was so good.
So was that meant to be a smaller version of the creature that was in the hold of that ship?
Oh, that's a good question.
I thought it looked kind of similar.
It could be. I didn't pick up on that, but I think it's very possible.
Like the way the mouth opened and stuff made it seem similar to me.
It would make sense. And that would be a nice piece of revenge there at the end. But I don't know. I liked, there were so many little good snippets, like when he's eating the porridge and he's like, "Don't play with your food." I'm like, the thing was clearly attacking him. He was not playing with his food.
It was a face hugger.
And I liked when he stays with the couple and he's like, "Mind your manners, you know what I mean." Like, that was so good.
He just looked longingly into the tank.
But it's interesting because at that point the eggs were fertilized. You saw at least the one tadpoles hatching or whatever. So my hope is that Baby Yoda's like, "Oh, it has life now."
Yeah, he's like, he can tell the difference.
You know, but
I mean, he did make friends with the little tadpole.
He did. And I liked, like, cause like I had a joke meme I did after the first episode. For those of you who like Life is Strange, there's that like, this action will have consequences thing. It's a game where like the choices you make in the game impact what happens later in the game. And so I had like the exchange between Mando and Cobb, like where Mando was just gonna fight him right there in the canteen and be like, "This action will have consequences." I just kept watching this episode, like the first one with all of this stuff, and he's like fighting and taking the kid to the fighting ring, and then the second episode in the beginning, which was just the horrifying part where the dude was like holding the baby Yoda at night point. I wasn't happy, and then he like shot him up on the jetpack. But even then, I'm like, this is what Baby Yoda sees every day. It's just like people being murdered in horrendous ways. And then the rest of that episode, him not doing what he's told to do. And I'm like, well, why do you think? What does he, his line to Cobb is like, oh, the kid's seen worse. I'm like, that's the problem.
Is he being desensitized to violence? Oh no.
I think my internet took a hit, but it should be coming back.
You were frozen for a second.
Yeah, my internet froze but it's back. But it's just like...
Nope, you're good now.
It's just, like, this is what he sees all the time. This is why bounty hunters don't usually raise toddlers. And, like, I wasn't necessarily full-on expecting Darkseid Baby Yoda, but I'm like, at the same time, if he just shows up as chaotic evil one day, I was not gonna be surprised.
It's very Loki-esque to me.
Yeah. It's just...
And
just
saying
mischief.
it that way makes me think about Boba in Attack of the Clones.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, shoot him, Dad.
Yeah, no, it's
So
just... Go ahead.
I guess the question, do bounty hunters make good parents?
This one at least, see, like, my thing is I've still never fully forgiven him for turning the kid in the first place to get his armor. And everyone was like, oh, he had to get his armor, and then he went back. And I'm like,
Yeah, but he didn't plan it that way.
He didn't plan it. That wasn't the strategy. He wasn't like, hey, kid, I'll come back for you later. I just really need this Beskar. Like, I still haven't fully let go of that. And so I'm just like, this guy needs to pick up the parenting skills. So we'll see, but I'm,
He's getting there, Jess. He's getting there.
I get, he made him a cot. He's got a cot in the ship now. So that's.
I want to sleep in that cubby. I'm sorry. It looks so comfortable.
It's just like you just tuck in. And if you gotta pee in the middle of the night, it's right by the toilet. So convenient.
So convenient.
Everything you need.
Although that raises questions about when they're all confined to the cockpit. Like, do you just hold it for days until you get to where you're going?
You might have to. I don't know.
Didn't he say that in the last episode?
Or he's like, I think he calls it the privy. He's like, you better use the privy.
Use it now. Yeah.
No.
I have a feeling there wasn't much of a privy left, though.
After those spiders.
But, I mean, at that point, you can just go out in the ice somewhere. And what are you gonna do? To go back to last week, I thought it was cool they brought back Dave's character. And we had the throwback to the Prison Break episode, which was kind of cool. And kind of setting up, like, his relationship with the New Republic. And it even shows you, like, at some point, Mando is probably just BSing, but it does show you, like, the difference of what's going on in space under the New Republic versus, like, Imperial territory with, like, needs for transponders and things. I've always found it interesting how the Empire was so about order and efficiency and yet seemed to thrive on crime syndicates. And then you have, like, the disorder, supposedly, of the New Republic, if you're listening to Imperial propaganda, but that they're the ones who don't want the crime syndicates around. And that's just, like, you see it in Bloodline, I feel like. It's just something you see kind of woven out, certainly through the new canon. And it was just a really subtle way to kind of tap into that as well. And just to throw back, because I feel like a common complaint people have about this show is they'll call an episode filler. And I feel like calling something filler isn't fair when you don't know the full journey, because you don't actually know if it's setting something up or not. Because, like, the Prison Break episode is pretty arguably filler in that he's literally just going to make money. But then the after effects of that episode helped him out with last week's episode, which, I mean, maybe you could argue is filler too, if he had just not gotten stuck on his way to the other planet. But, like, little things like that weaving episode to episode.
Well, I akin it to your life. If your life is just full of these huge milestones one
Mhm.
after the other, how do you deal with that? You
Mhm.
need these.
Yeah.
Even in storytelling, you need these beats, these moments where there is character development, there is story development, but it's very subtle, and
Mhm.
it gives the viewer too a chance to just kind of absorb these characters and who they are.
Yeah.
So that's why I don't think there's anything as a filler episode. People would disagree with me, but that's my opinion.
I'm the person that almost got kicked out of Star Wars Twitter for implying The Empire Strikes Back was filler. So that was a day.
Oh, Jess, that's a no-no. Don't do that.
I didn't say filler was bad.
Technically, if we want to talk about that, does that make Revenge of the Sith filler? Because all it does is get us from point A to point B.
Right.
It's fills in that last blank for us.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's just...
You're saying it to a Revenge of the Sith hardcore fan, and I'm like, yeah, you could make that argument.
You're just getting stuff done. And it's... I think for me, I would call a lot of things filler. I just don't, like what Ray was saying, I just don't think filler's bad. I think that that's a reflection of everyone's used to binge watching now, and when you're binge watching, you don't even necessarily, sometimes you don't even notice episode to episode because Netflix or whatever skips you past intros and skips you past credits, and if you're not paying close enough attention, you might not even notice you're on a different episode. And
and it just goes to show that not everything is life-altering story beats, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
You know, so like imagine that you had, you know, a show that takes place in real time where, you know, episode to episode it covers the course of a single day, but then in every episode they act as if it's the biggest thing in the world. Eventually you get burned out, and like, no, Jack Bauer has to like take a trip to the bathroom at some point. He can't, his family can't get, you know, abducted again, really. Like, you know, like
the show writer
all in the course of one day.
The show writers always said that Jack goes to the bathroom during the commercials like everyone else.
There you go.
Like everyone else. Yeah.
That was always their answer when they were asked that question. And yes, his daughter can get kidnapped again because she's the worst. But anyway, that's a whole different conversation. With just kind of to talk about like the look of the episode too, I was so impressed with Bo and her posse. The jetpack motions, like they looked like Clone Wars. Like it looked in Rebels, like the motion they had, like zipping up and down. It was really impressive.
Well, it's the difference between being trained to use it and, you know, sort of figuring it out because you own one.
Well, that's true too.
Yeah, that is very true.
I was just worried that like some of that, like as much as I wanted to see these characters in live action, I was worried they weren't going to translate from animation to live action as well, because in animation you can exaggerate movements a little bit, but here I thought it still worked really well, and that's probably largely in testament to how good the animation was in Clone Wars and Rebels, but also just how well they've done with this show.
Yeah.
But no, I to go back and talk about the difference too with the two kinds of Mandalorians. Conversation varied off a little bit, but I was really excited now that like to talk about like how much of a zealot his group feels, like not just within canon, but there's the part of me that's like, I really love how much, if you were to only watch the first season of The Mandalorian and that was your concept of what a Mandalorian is, like you wouldn't think any of that was weird necessarily, unless you had like a personal problem with something they were doing. And I really am excited to see this journey for Din of like if the first season, you know, if you have the armor metaphor, right? Like when he sells my son, he says my armor has lost its integrity or whatever. Like if you have that kind of metaphor and how he's trying to figure out who he is within the armor, and the armor is who he is, and my guns are part of my religion, all of that stuff that he says. Like it's opening up this season for him to realize these people who came in and saved me, or I'll say save me, because I'm not convinced that they're uninvolved, that this whole thing that I knew, this whole belief structure I had, might not even have the honor to it that I thought it had, right? Like he's following it for this honor code, but it's coming out of this kind of violent group, and he can see what does it mean to be a Mandalorian. I mean, armor is always important to a Mandalorian. It is important to Bo. I mean, she says this armor has been in my family for however long, but that it doesn't have to be all of who you are.
Right.
And so it's just kind of seeing how that will play out and what he kind of finds in himself, and finds that through taking care of Baby Yoda, probably. Because, I mean, this is... I pick on him for not being a very good parent, but this is still something he's trying to figure out.
Right.
If I'm correct, Bo is the second character to make the jump from animation to live action. First being Saw. I think Saw was definitely... in new canon, probably. There were a couple of comic book characters that made the jump to live action. But I think TV show-wise, she's the second. And she's the first to be portrayed by the same person.
Mm-hmm.
But like even Aya Sakura is from the comics. George just really liked her, and so he put her in the movies. The armor is going to be an antagonist alongside Gideon, or something like that. Nick wonders. That's interesting. Is he going to eventually go against the armor? I really want to see the armor and Bo interact. John's wondering the same thing. Would they know each other, or would they be like... How would Bo feel about her, especially if she's somebody leading this Children of the Watch group?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. But I'm excited for where things go. I'm kind of curious what's going to take Mando back to being against Gideon. Because right now, he wants to continue on his hunt to find Ahsoka. And... if the theory from earlier is right, she's not going to show up till Dave's episode. I wonder what'll pull Gideon back in. Like, does Bo show back up? Does Gideon find him? Because, like, he'll probably be on some kind of security footage from that ship. So, like, Gideon could come after him again. I don't know. Or maybe he wants to ask his friends to come with him on a journey because the plane is far away. I don't know. I'm kind of curious what takes him back to Navarro.
I mean, presumably Gideon still wants the child, right?
Yeah,
right.
I would
he was the one that was
yeah.
behind it all to start with.
Yes.
And so, like, we have now Bo wanting the saber, but it's still, like, intersecting, paths anyway.
Yeah, I agree. Dale says...
I mean...
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Gideon already knew who he was, too, so, like there's that already a bigger connection there.
Gideon could be going after Ahsoka too, for all we know. I mean, if Bo knows, then he could know, or Bo said it on that ship. So again, if there's a black box on that ship somewhere that they discover, I mean, I know like Bo took it, but like if they could get the files from that ship or something, he might be able to overhear it. Dale thinks Armor and Bo know each other. Nick says, I keep thinking that the Armorer was playing a little coy about the Jedi stuff. This episode, I believe she kept a lot from them. I could see that for sure. John thinks Gideon will be hunting Din down. Oh, this is a good point Mick brings up. Interesting to hear Gideon has a fleet, and not really surprising for a man of his status of a Moff, but that's good to know. Like, that he's not just... He took over Navarro. That he seems to have a much wider network as an Imperial warlord. Which, it makes sense that it isn't just Navarro, I guess, but it is cool that he has more of a reach than we might have believed otherwise.
It's clear that the stormtroopers that he has, though, they're not the best.
Well, yeah.
I mean, granted, white stormtroopers have never been the best, but these guys, when I was watching the episode, I was kind of like, yeah, close the door, you know?
I thought that was hilarious. Like, I was like, well,
it was the wrong thing to do, but because they got sucked out anyway, but
we trapped him in the control room. He's like, you trapped them where? It was classic stupid Imperial, though. I loved it.
Yeah. Well, and then I was like, that guy was definitely loyal to Gideon because he basically took a cyanide pill that was electrocution.
Right.
Right.
That was intense.
Or at least knew that death was going to be easier than whatever Gideon was going to do to him.
Right.
Because that's
probably easier than whatever Bo-Katan would have done to him too.
You're probably true. It was funny because I was watching that and I'm like, am I supposed to know who that character is, or do I just recognize the actor? And then I realized, I think, yeah, he's in a million things. I think
so much.
I think he's the Man in Black on Lost, and then I'm pretty sure he was in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. He's been around.
Definite character actor.
Yeah, it's cool that they got him for this.
Oh, and then the other guy, the guy who made the mistake of closing the doors and they got sucked out. He's in Parks and Rec.
Oh, is he?
Mm-hmm, that's where I recognized him from, because I couldn't put it together, and then someone mentioned it on Twitter. So
I feel like there's so many people in this show, and at some level, I think it's also just a lot of people who just want to be in The Mandalorian.
Or Star Wars in general, yeah.
Yeah, and it's their chance. Because I feel like, for as good of a character actor as the one guy was, the leader on that ship, I feel like he could have had some kind of role that was multiple episodes.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also cool because he got to be in Star Wars now.
Mm-hmm.
Dale says, I think Gideon hired Fennec and she was going to Boba to find connections to the Mandalorians. That's an interesting theory. Because we never really do find out why she was on Tatooine, as far as I remember.
Yeah.
Thinks we'll see Fennec again. Boba probably won't be a good guy like most people think. I don't think most people think Boba will be a good guy. I
don't know.
He's definitely going to want his armor. And I don't think Din would... Does Din even have it anymore? Like, because it would have been on the Razor Crest. I wonder if it... Like, unless it was in the cockpit...
Got blown out in space.
It just might be in space now. Eaten by spiders. Like, well, Boba, you got out of the Sarlacc, but now it's inside of a giant burnt spider on this snow moon. So, have fun. With how much we find out each episode, I see certain pieces fall into place yet opens episode. Yeah, that's how I'm feeling too, Mick. Because, like, that's what I was trying to figure out, is I feel like there's so many threads, even for as much as they've been packing in, it's a lot to put into the rest of the season. But at the same time, they've been putting in a lot.
Yeah.
Right, and if Disney is... Because, you know, we had Solo, we had Rogue One, but then they decided to make the Kenobi movie into a show, or whatever.
Rumor.
If they're trying to lay the groundwork for an expanded universe that, you know, rivals the MCU, then maybe these threads aren't actually going to be solved in The Mandalorian, but they're actually going to be a different show.
I think
show up in a different show that's related.
I still really want Bo to show up in Kenobi. I would love
that would be awesome.
I would love to see the two of them have a conversation on Tatooine. And almost any show would have some reason to connect to Ahsoka. I mean, with Cassian being a fulcrum.
Right.
So it would be, you know, she could just kind of become the Nick Fury of the Star Wars cinematic universe.
What would the Avengers... No, it'd be something else. The Avengers Initiative, what would it be called? Does that mean
the Returners Initiative. I don't know.
The only bad thing about that is that because all of these shows are going to be set in different time frames, like they're going to have to be careful with some of that because, again, I'm thinking there's a significant number of people who this is a lot of people's first foray into a larger Star Wars universe.
Yep.
And, like, I still have to tell people that Rogue One didn't happen as part of the sequel trilogy.
I do too.
You know? and so like occasionally, like if she shows up here and this is where we see her first, but then she's all of a sudden in Kenobi too.
Yeah.
You know, like they're gonna have to do something to distinguish one from the other.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, like, other than Cobb saying the second Death Star blew up, there really isn't a whole lot of explicit explanation of when...
I have to explain it to people all the time what stuff takes place. I just watched Rogue One with a friend who's never seen a Star Wars before, and we watched it as part of our movie group, and I had to like sit there for like 5 minutes and be like, it takes place here, which is in front of these movies, which happened in the 70s, but then these movies came out. Yeah. So we don't want that. I don't want to shy people away because there's timeline issues.
I mean, what I always say is a crawl solves a lot of things, but no one asks for my opinion.
Mick says that he thought that Den was going to bring Fett's armor back to the armor so it could be melted down. Now that's what I want that so bad now. I want that armor just to be like 10 million little whistling birds. Like, I just want a lifetime supply of whistling birds.
Whistling boobas. Whistling boobas, but instead of like blow-up sounds, they all just say yep when they blow up. Yep.
And in the future, I feel like I need to make if that happens, need to make a meme of Alec Guinness in A New Hope when he's saying, you know, whatever that line is about voices crying out, and then it's Django talking about the Boba Fett fans.
They never know. Mick says, give Bryce Dallas Howard the reins of a Bo-Katan series, and I would not argue against that.
I think she's proving that she can be a really good director.
Mm-hmm. And they already gave Kenobi to Deborah Chow because of how well she did on the first season.
Is that still confirmed? Because I thought I read several months ago that there was the shakeup or whatever, and everyone was freaking out because it could have been canceled. But
well, and I feel like that show's kind of in limbo right now anyway because COVID. Like same with Cassian, because like last I knew on Kenobi, they had scripts. They were going through rewrites, and people were panicking because nothing in the history of cinema has ever been rewritten before.
Oh my god, yeah.
And so it meant there was going to be a problem, even though Ewan was like,
it's fine.
It's fine, but okay. Ewan was, we just got Ewan back, and we're trying to scare him off again. Like, he's just gonna be like, oh, never mind, to take it back. These people aren't worth it.
I did see a thing, though. Who's the actor that plays Cassian? I'm
Diego Luna.
Yeah, we're on his social media. I saw a TikTok video that somebody made about it, but apparently he was posting somewhere that they were filming.
Yeah,
he was on his way to a filming location or something like that.
They might be starting with that show.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Which is exciting.
I'm so excited for Cassian.
Oh. So
excited for Cassian, and just what they could do with it, especially seeing how they've been willing to pull in references in Mando. Like, what they could do in a between trilogies movie, like between prequel and original trilogies movie. Especially because I'm still holding out that they'll put Krennic in it. Even like,
you say that one too many times, and it's gonna have a side mission with Bodhi. And it's just gonna.
I don't hate Bodhi. I just think that for a pilot, he didn't pilot very much. That's all.
He was more than a pilot, Jeff. That was the point. Even though he's like, I'm the pilot. By the end of the movie, he showed that he was more than a pilot.
That's fair. That's fair. But no, anyway, that's not about the Mandalorian. But I think Krennic is a cool character you could put in there, but like he wouldn't have to.
Did we lose Django?
Oh, we always lose Django after about an hour. His Discord, for some reason, makes him leave after about an hour, and we're at about an hour since we started the call. Without fail. It's just nice because now you're here, because usually he drops off and I'm by myself, and I'm like,
and you don't like talking to yourself? Oh,
I feel like Jeff Goldblum in Jurassic Park. Now I'm sitting in the car talking to myself. But he'll be back. Cassian introduces us to Dr. Aphra. Oh, that Mick, don't get my hopes up like that. That's not.
She'd be in so many different mediums then.
She would be, and deserve all of them.
That's fine, but yeah.
Like, I'm all for more Aphra.
But I guess my thing is if the Mandalorian is a jumping off point for different stories, or if like, hey, let's do an anthology series like we do with Fact Puff, you know. From a certain point of view, but maybe it's taking place in a different thing and it's different stories.
I'm
a big fan of short stories, so
I would love like a Tales from Star Wars TV show, just like the old Legends Tales from books, like Tales from the Cantina, Tales from Jabba's Palace. Right. But like, just here's a random one-off and then we can all have so much fun explaining timelines to people.
Even more so.
Exactly, just be even more confusing. Give me sassy female space Indiana Jones, please. Yes, especially give me 000 and BT. Oh my gosh. I hear, and like obviously it sounded different in the audio drama, but I always hear
Right.
000's voice as, if you guys have seen the Auralnauts Star Wars videos, if you're familiar with those at all, C-3PO is just called Creepio, and I just always hear Creepio's voice. So funny. That's what I hear him as. But yeah, we hit the hour point, as I said, because Django briefly left and came back. So you know. Do you guys have? Is there anything about either of the two episodes that you guys kind of wanted to touch on that we didn't get to, or any other thoughts about like what we might see in the future?
I guess I do want, like, if the idea that Baby Yoda is, you know, he's kind of chaotic, evil, I want to see that pan out.
Right.
Maybe not this season, but maybe next season, and it's kind of like Din has this moment where he's like, oh no, or like something, you know, because he is a baby.
Yeah.
I mean, I know he's technically 50 years old, but he's a baby.
Mm-hmm.
So
he's
not always seeing the best things right now, or, you know, reacting or doing things.
Mm-hmm.
And I also want to see this just from a purely subjective point of view, that we get to a point where an animal doesn't have to die.
Oh yeah, that's fair.
You know, we had the like rhinoceros looking creature in the first season, and some other stuff, and then we had the spiders and
all the beasts get slain.
Like, I understand, like, you have that many spiders going after you, you're not going to be like trying to make friends. I understand, but like if we can get Baby Yoda to connect with animals in a way, that'd be awesome. We'll see.
I mean, that was basically the one redeeming thing about Ezra Bridger, was that he liked animals.
I love how you have Django, who clearly is not a fan of Ezra, and then you have me, who's like, oh, I love Rebels. I love everything about it.
I love Rebels. I mean, I've got the whole Ghost crew here behind me. It's Ezra that I have a problem with.
Here, we'll show off Django's. Yeah, you can see his Funkos there behind him. No, it's we like to have sassy fun on here. You should see Django and I when we get in our Krennic versus Tarkin debates. And because
I mean, you're kind of overstating it as if there's, you know, a debate to be had.
I mean, you're right, because Krennic's better.
When there's a Krennic novel, let me know.
I mean, he's in a lot of other novels, but I mean, he's too big of a personality. You have to have other personalities to diffuse him.
By which you mean he's too small of a personality and can't accomplish anything on his own.
By which I mean, if I have to see one character in skin-tight green spandex, I know which one I'd rather see.
Adam Driver.
I mean, I wouldn't mind that either. Just not Peter Cushing. How about that?
Although I really love, there's like a big thing going around, like where a lot of people are sharing like behind the scenes photos that I guess they like, a lot of these I've seen before, but it's like we rediscover them every few years. Mm-hmm. But like the pictures of like Peter Cushing, like if you're just filming me from the waist up, I'm gonna wear slippers.
I love it.
Like zoom out, he's got just on like slippers on set.
That's such a power move.
It is. It really is.
A power move.
I love it. I think for me, I too would like to see just some kind of chaotic Yoda stuff. I'm really just looking to. Part of this is like the prequelist in me and the Jedi apologist in me, but like I want everyone to understand why the Jedi trained each other like from children, because everyone's like, they take the 4-year-olds away from the parents, and I'm like, do you know what a temper tantrum with the Force looks like? Because I don't think you want to know what it looks like when the couch flies out the window into the front lawn. I
agree.
So there's part of me that's
from the rooftops.
like, let's let's show why Jedi training is the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm pumped for. So that's something I'd like to see going forward. With his kind of chaotic behavior. And then, do you have a final thought, Django?
Oh, I mean, maybe along those lines, if you really want to get into that, we could just have Karen Travis write most of season 3. But apart from that, I'm really enjoying this series. Like, I don't know. I feel like I said earlier on, I keep saying there are things I don't want, and then this show gives me the things that I don't want, and I get really excited about it. So like, I'm at a point now where I already trust Dave implicitly, but I trust Jon Favreau to do right by these characters and this universe, and I can't imagine not liking wherever this story goes.
Yep.
So
I'm excited for the future as well. So we'll figure out. I don't know what the future of the streams are going to look like, just because we've had 2 weeks now with wacky schedules, but we'll be doing something. And I also have the 40 days of FactPov project, which I still have to make today's video, actually, so I should probably get on that.
You're doing better than me. I haven't even touched it yet, and I love those.
Trying to do like a review every day, and it's a lot. I got to get ahead at some point. But Ray, thank you for being here. It was great to have you on. Glad we
had an awesome time,
and glad we could actually sneak Django on for a day. But thank you all for being here. Zolan, I see you just dropped down. Sorry, we're about to end the stream, but it's good to see you. If you guys haven't already, please leave a like. It would mean a lot to me. With that, I'm going to end the stream. Thank you all.